second successive cup defeat for Arsenal. All of a sudden, from being talked about as potential quadruple winners, they can now only put 2 trophies on the mantelpiece.
But the pressure is on them like never before. I still fancy them to do it in the Premier League, but it's amazing what happens when the pressure comes on you.
I mean, I think you saw it in the dugouts as well. Arteta was looked a bit nervy as well, and I think that's actually sort of coming through to the players.
Creatively, they were lacking.
I'm not convinced by Martin Odegaard. I want to see him take a game by the scruff of the neck. I'd rather see Max Dowman.
This kid he's a world-class talent. We hope he becomes a world-class player. And at this moment, Arsenal need any little edge that they can get. And it looks like and we talk about pressure, and the last 2 games, it felt like they haven't been able to handle it. He doesn't have any at all.
I can understand a loyalty to a squad member, but at this stage of the season, I mean, you need David Raya in goal rather than Kepa. We saw that in the Carabao Cup final. You saw it again yesterday with the fact that he doesn't exactly spread confidence.
Hello and welcome to Premier League All Access with me, Alex Crook, the former Chelsea defender Scott Minto and top journalist Henry Winter. Well, what an eventful FA Cup quarter-final weekend we've had. We now know the semi-finals will be Southampton against Manchester City and Chelsea against Leeds. So many stories to unpick over the course of the next 45 minutes or so. We'll also be looking ahead to a big midweek in the Champions League for both Arsenal and Liverpool, looking to bounce back from their respective FA Cup exits. But Henry Winter, what have we just seen at London Stadium? An absolutely incredible game between Leeds and West Ham.
Yeah, and we were fortunate to be able to watch it on the television because some of the West Ham fans were leaving at the start of injury time and couldn't get back in. West Ham actually had to put a note out to actually say, listen, it's against legislation. You can't get back in. And what drama they missed in hammer time, injury time, call it what you want, then extra time, and then the penalties with this 20-year-old kid coming on, Finn Herrick stepping in there for his debut, saving the first penalty, and then Leeds, their class with their penalties, told them they're going to Wembley in the cup set. Well, they're reaching a cup semi-final for the first time in 39 years.
Yeah, he was so nearly the hero, the 20-year-old rookie. I think West Ham fans may be asking why they didn't have Mads Hermansen on the bench as a backup. Actually, he did his bit in the penalty shootout, saving that spot kick from Peru. As a former West Ham man, Scott, you'll be devastated they've not made it through to the last 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of thinking there's a bit of a drab end to the 90 minutes and, you know, West Ham have kind of limped out. And then suddenly when the 11 minutes mark where number went up, you're thinking, wow, if anyone's felt a bit low and the game's over, then that's plenty of time, not just to get the one, but the second. And then once you get the one, somehow that momentum, you feel you've got it. So when they got it to 2-2, I thought it's got to be West Ham's. You know, in extra time, I thought they were the better side. Looked like they had more energy, and Leeds were quite happy to take it to pens in the end. And then it's almost like the hero, isn't it? The young lad comes on, he saved the first penalty. This story's written for him. No, it isn't, actually. Unfortunately, some of the senior boys, I'll never criticise anyone for missing a penalty. Just to step up and take a penalty takes a lot of courage. But look, I mean, Leeds will probably say over the 90 minutes they deserved to win, but unfortunately West Ham just fell short.
And the fact this was probably the 4th biggest talking point of the weekend tells you just how good it has been as the FA Cup rolled around. Again, no Premier League action for us to reflect on, but certainly plenty to debate. So let's kick things off then by looking at the FA Cup, and we'll start at St Mary's. I was privileged to commentate this game between Southampton and Arsenal for talkSPORT. A second successive cup defeat for Arsenal. All of a sudden, from being talked about as potential quadruple winners, they can now only put 2 trophies on the mantelpiece. Psychologically, Scott, how big a bearing do you think this will have on the rest of the season for Arsenal?
Yeah, I actually think it will. I mean, I've always kind of backed Arsenal. I backed them right at the start of the season before a ball was kicked. I said the strength of the squad that they've got, plus the kind of itch that they just haven't been able to scratch for the last 3 years. You know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. They'll just bounce back. And to be fair, throughout the season, I think they have whenever people have asked questions of them. But it's one thing now getting towards the business end of the season and okay, I never really thought that they would win the quadruple, but you're in a final, win the final, win that first trophy. We've talked before, haven't we, about what Jose Mourinho has done when he first came into English football and the confidence that gave. Danny Murphy talked about when they won the treble, Liverpool, how that first trophy really gave them the confidence while also taking a little bit of pressure off them. So not only have they been knocked out of one competition, they've been knocked out of two in back-to-back games. So that the pressure is on them like never before. I still fancy them to do it in the Premier League. And I think it's probably not a bad thing that the next game is the Champions League game. But Sporting away will not be easy. And if they suddenly lose that by, say, 2-0 or something like that, then you just wonder if it could all cave in. That Man City game just around the corner is just looking bigger than ever now, isn't it?
Do you know what I found really interesting about this game is how rattled some of the Arsenal players looked, and Gabriel in particular. I said at half time to a few journos in the press room, I've never seen him bullied in the way that he was bullied by Ross Stewart in that first half. But there was an incident, I think inside the first minute, where Tom Fellows, who was excellent for Southampton, set up the winning goal. He came breaking down the right-hand side. Gabriel has slid in, perfectly timed tackle, won the ball, put it out for a throw-in. And all of a sudden, he's screaming in Tom Fellows' face. I wonder what that was all about. Is that a sign they're feeling the pressure? I didn't get it. This is the Premier League leaders against a Championship side. He's won the ball. There was no suggestion that Fellows was going down looking for a penalty or anything like that. What was that all about, Henry?
I mean, I think you saw it in the dugout as well. Arteta was looked a bit nervy as well, and I think that's actually sort of coming through to the players. I think it doesn't help for Gabriel. Obviously, he didn't have Saliba alongside him for a while. That he didn't have his first choice goalkeeper behind him. I mean, I can understand a loyalty to a squad member, but at this stage of the season, I mean, you need David Raya in goal rather than Kepa. We saw that in the Carabao Cup final. You saw it again yesterday with the fact that he doesn't exactly spread confidence, whether the ball at his feet, shot stopping is okay. And maybe that sort of unnerved Gabriel. I mean, I think if we're looking at footballers of the year, when we get round to vote on it, and we've just received our notifications as football writers and media, I think Gabriel will probably be in the sort of top 5 or 6 for many people's consideration, certainly also for the players along with Declan Rice. So I think there was an uncertainty born of the fact that they were missing, important players, whether injured or rested. I think if you put Declan Rice back in there, Zubimendi, if he starts in front of Gabriel, he might sort of regain some of the his usual composure. But I think you were right. He did look a bit rattled, and this is slightly uncharted territory for a lot of these players at this stage of the season. They don't have the sort of muscle memory that Manchester City, certainly embodied by Pep Guardiola. They know how to finish these games and these seasons out. But I still think, I mean, Arsenal are still favourites for the title, even if they have got a very difficult away trip. But I agree. I mean, Gabriel, he's a really important player for them, and he is a senior player, and he has to show sort of more calm, more composure. I mean, Arsenal's best player and most mature and composed player was a 16-year-old who's got his GCSEs in a couple of weeks.
Or does that tell us, Scott, about leaders as well? Because there was no Declan Rice, no Bukayo Saka, Saliba on the bench, as Henry's mentioned, Raya watching from the stands as well. The fact a lot of those senior players didn't stand up and be counted. I thought Gabriel Jesus was dreadful. Havertz made the goal, didn't do an awful lot else. Ben White was at fault for the first goal. He was getting dogs abuse all night from the Southampton fans. What does it tell us that their best player was the 16-year-old?
I think it tells us a lot. I think we've both got kids who are about to do GCSEs as well. It's crazy, isn't it? How Max Townwood is doing it as well. I think it tells us a lot about. I mean, look, I'm looking at the team now. Gabriel Jesus. He is an experienced player. He's won trophies with Manchester City. Kai Havertz, he scored a winning goal in the Champions League. Martinelli is an experienced player. Martin Odegaard certainly is as well. And then you've got Gabriel, Ben White. Amongst the others that are there, Christian Norgard, you can say, is certainly an experienced Premier League player and also an experienced Championship player, and they're up against the Championship side. But it's amazing what happens when the pressure comes on you. And that's something which has been said about Arsenal. And I thought, actually, they're okay with that now. They've dealt with that and they've gone past the horrible moments of the last few seasons. Let's first of all give Southampton absolute credit. You know, they were unbeaten in 14 going into the game. I said at Christmas time, if they were somehow able to get into the playoffs by the end of the season, I fancied them for the playoffs and going up. Well, they're already there, so they're ahead of the game in that. And Tonda Eckert, I think, you know, they had got a massive game on Tuesday against Wrexham, and then another big game against Derby at the weekend. So he could easily have just said, you know what, actually, we're not going to play our top players here. But no, it's all about winning football matches, and that creates a momentum. So they are up against a really good side with the crowd up for it. But if you want to win the Premier League, and that's the ultimate thing, obviously the FA Cup as well, you have to find a way around that. You can't have your top players available all the time. And yeah, I was disappointed in a lot of those senior pros.
He did say before the game, Tom Derecker, that he'd seen weaknesses in Arsenal that he felt his side could exploit. And clearly that was to try and beat the press, go long when they had to, but basically just get those front four players running the Arsenal defence. And they looked petrified at times, particularly in the first half. I've mentioned Fellows. I thought Cienza on the other wing was terrific. 27 years of age. Where's he been hiding? The Brazilian. He's surely destined to go and join a top club. Ross Stewart, deceptively quick, brilliant finish. Someone who's had a wretched time with injuries. I worked it out before the Fulham game, actually. Since joining Southampton in the summer of 2023, he's missed more than 100 games through injury. If he'd been fit that whole time, I suggest that he won a lot more matches along the way. Finazaz as well, playing in behind, was superb. The two centre-backs, Harwood Bellis and Nathan Wood, I thought deserved a lot of credit. So it wasn't a fluke. And what they did, Southampton, which is what a lot of Premier League teams don't do when they play against Arsenal, they showed them no respect. They were brave. Even at 2-1 up, they weren't going for the corner flag. They could have scored a third towards the end of the game. So you're right. I think he deserves tremendous credit. Does it take a little bit of the sparkle away? They've got Manchester City in the semi-final. Will they be thinking what might have been if we'd been on the other half of the draw?
Well, I think there's some of their players have got Manchester City connections. You mentioned Harwood Bellis. I think they will be absolutely up for it. I think what we saw there was an incredibly intelligent tactical performance and brilliantly executed by the players. They know that Ben White was likely to start with Jurien Timber out. Ben White is known to sort of push up, join the attacks, and they targeted the space in behind them. Slightly similar on the other flank with Miles Lewis-Skelly stepping into midfield. And they went for it. And as you say, they went direct at times. I mean, they played it around a bit, but absolutely they beat the press and they preyed on Arsenal's occasional vulnerability at the back. Manchester City, I mean, they are going to Wembley, and this is the 50th anniversary of 76, and what an incredibly iconic moment that was for them. I think the fact that they wore the sort of replica of the shirt from 76 as well, it's almost like a second skin for Southampton fans, that yellow with the blue trim as well. It probably inspired them as well, because this is not simply about the present. This is about sort of honouring the past and the great legends. As you know, as you walk into St Mary's, you see the pictures on the wall. Ditto at the Dell when you went there. Scott probably played there. You know that, you know, history is all around at all clubs and also at Southampton. So, you know, it means a lot.
Yeah, there was a brilliant tifo before the game. Bobby Stokes, the winning goal scorer, was on it. And Peter Rodriguez, who I spoke to this week, actually the captain, 82 years young, still got a vivid recollection of that cup final win and going up and being the last skipper to collect the trophy from the Queen. I hope actually that they can find a role for him at Wembley in the semi-final, and the atmosphere at St Mary's. The fans really played their part as well. It was absolutely crackling. It was brilliant to be there. I hope they came across on talkSPORT. One positive for Arsenal, Martin Odegaard back out there for the first time since February the 22nd, got through the first hour. You would imagine he'll start against Sporting Lisbon. They need him back to somewhere near his best, Henry, in these final weeks of the season, because creatively they were lacking.
I'm not convinced by Martin Odegaard. I just think against elite oppositions, I want to see him take a game by the scruff of the neck. I mean, the leader at Arsenal is clearly Declan Rice and Gabriel, as you've been talking about. I'd rather see Max Dowman. I know he's a kid, and we talk about the sort of, you know, the fact that his main exams he's got coming up at GCSEs rather than Champions League and Premier League. But I just think there's a fearlessness to him. I mean, you know, kids of that age, they just don't understand pressure. They don't know about doubt. They just go out and play. And I think that's what Arsenal need at the moment, because you rightly mentioned some of the players have got nerves. I think Dowman doesn't. And if if Saka is going to be out for a little while, and Madueke can then play on the right, and you can play a Dowman centrally, get in the ball. I mean, he was, we said he was the best player for Arsenal on the pitch. He is fearless. He's bold. I'm not advocating he goes to the World Cup. I'm not advocating that he starts every game. Not even advocating that he starts in the Champions League. But I just think in the Premier League, he'll, physically, mentally, he looks up for it. I mean, Scott played at a very young age and knows how fearless players at that age can be. And I think that's what Arsenal need at the moment. Odegaard, he doesn't hurt teams enough for me.
Do you know what, Crookie? I mean, I actually heard you say that with Sean Custis about Martin Henry, and I'm probably a little bit more of a fan than him. But what I would say, what Arsenal were lacking in that particular game was, if you've got a Downman, Havertz, Martinelli, or Gabriel Jesus up front, then Martin Odegaard is really a very much an attacking midfielder as well. You've only got Christian Norgard to defend. And I think it shows when Zubimendi and Declan Rice are together. Not only are they good in terms of starting attacks, but they're really good in terms of making sure they don't look open. And I thought Arsenal looked really open. So personally, to play Odegaard and Havertz and Dowman and Martinelli, but I'm 100% with you on Dowman. I mean, I felt he should have come on for the last 20 minutes in the Carabao Cup, because you don't. I mean, at 16, I was only in the Charlton reserves, but at 17, I did play first team football, and you don't realize what's going on. You don't quite understand. My old man used to be really nervous taking me to the matches, and you're right. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And then it's a little bit later on, and this kid he's a world-class talent. We hope he becomes a world-class player. And at this moment, Arsenal need any little edge that they can get. And it looks like and we talk about pressure, and the last two games, it felt like they haven't been able to handle it. He doesn't have any at all.
And it feels like a pivotal stage of the season now for Arsenal. We're going to preview Sporting Lisbon in the Champions League in depth later in the podcast. But it's Bournemouth at home in their next Premier League game. And Andoni Iraola's side, not easy to play against, don't lose very often, particularly since the turn of the year. And then it's that big showdown match away from home against Manchester City, who warmed up for the final run-in with an emphatic FA Cup quarter-final win of their own. Manchester City 4, Liverpool 0. Now, if you were an Arsenal fan and you weren't nervous before watching this game about the final weeks of the Premier League season, you are now, aren't you, Henry? I mean, this was Manchester City back to their dazzling best.
And Haaland back to his dazzling best as well. I mean, it always makes me slightly sort of laugh and almost sigh when people are sort of questioning him, because you know that he's going to deliver. And okay, so he's had a couple of games when he hasn't scored, but he's just a sort of ferocious competitor. I mean, everything that he does off the pitch is designed to make him absolutely deliver on the pitch. Nutrition, sleep, conditioning, stretching, training, all the marginal gains, he absolutely embodies that. And
a
so
bit
he
like
was going to
Crookie,
come good.
Henry, a bit like Crookie before every game, yeah?
Well, I've seen many video reruns of Crookie's goal at Fratton Park. Was that in the Alan Knight match, which was brilliant, Crookie? And I have to say, you took it well. And I was at an EFL event the other day, and someone was saying, "Well, what's the best goal you've seen this season?" I have to say, it wasn't in the top 100, but it was bubbling up. But no, you took that well, absolutely. I mean, Haaland. I mean, I'd love to know, Scott, you're also a technical eye on this, but it seems to me that Semenyo, with the way that he gets down the right, the way that he delivers, Haaland, who does seem to make those runs from left to right in a sort of slightly more sort of centralised place in the box, absolutely, it's meat and drink for him as much as any delivery from Doku on the left. And I just think that is, we're already seeing how productive a partnership that can be.
Yeah, I said at the weekend, Henry, it's amazing, isn't it? When he goes 3 games without a goal, is an absolute drought and is a crisis. And, I used to cover the Spanish football. We'd say that only about Ronaldo and Messi. So if you talked about in that category, then that's not a bad category to be in. He's just a sensational player. And if you put the ball in the right place often enough, he will score. His movement in front of Konate, I know Konate gets a lot of stick, and he should do, because he should have got in front of him and got his arm up. But just the way he it reminded me of Alan Shearer in his prime as well, just going towards the back and then going towards the near post after that. It was just absolutely brilliant. And Semenyo, well, I thought he would take probably the rest of this season to to get used to one being a top class or a class player at a top club, but also understanding the positional sense and positional play that Pep wants his players to be. But he has been absolutely smashing it since he's come in, and already I think it's good that they're not necessarily the two of them playing as strikers together. But I think Semenyo, left foot, right foot, I'd be having kittens the night before a game thinking I've got to mark him because he's got the absolute lot. And it looks like he gets it straight away. So what an addition he's been. And he's already been a really good addition for Erling Haaland as well.
What about the performance of Bernardo Silva? Because I wrote in the notebook last week that we expect him to leave Manchester City at the end of the season, along with John Stones, potentially Rodri as well, although that one is less clear-cut because he's still under contract. But did he show enough in this quarter-final to suggest that actually maybe Manchester City should try and keep him for one more season?
I mean, every time I watch Bernardo Silva, I think give him another year's contract. I mean, he just looks outstanding. I mean, you looked at him at Wembley when he came off the pitch, and his shirt was so drained in sweat, it almost weighed more than he did. I mean, he's just fantastic. You know, he's such a team player. The way he gets back, he's a fighter. I mean, you know, there's nothing to him, and yet physically, and yet he absolutely gives everything. He takes the tackles. He's got that slightly sort of niggly edge mentally that a lot of the top players have. And I absolutely think they need him. I know they've got options and Pep just sort of moves around players, but Bernardo Silva, he can play wide, he can play as a 10, he can play deeper, he can win the ball with his just sort of pressing. And I just think for some of the younger players, will look at Bernardo Silva and see a player who's won so much and yet still has so much hunger for so more. So, look, I hope he stays on. But look, if he's got an opportunity to go back to his homeland or wherever, then I'm sure Manchester City will facilitate that. But he'll be missed.
Obviously, the big talking point from a Liverpool perspective, not only the heavy defeat and what that could mean for Arne Slot's future, but Mo Salah missing a penalty on what will be his last game at the Etihad. I think it's a bit sad watching the demise of Mo Salah. I had no confidence in him when he stepped up to take the penalty. He missed another really good chance in the first half that last season he was burying for fun. This reminds me a little bit of watching Tiger Woods trying to drag his battered body around 4 days at a major championship, or Andy Murray with his metal hip still trying to do it at the top level in tennis. Constitution Hill, the great racehorse that they've put on the flat because it can no longer jump over hurdles. It's pitiful in some ways watching Mo Salah.
Yeah, it is, because he has been a true Premier League legend, a true Premier League icon. When you think about it, it's just a little bit over 12 months ago he was knocking in the goals for fun. So the drop off has been big. It's not just been this season; it was towards the end of last season as well. I mean, I look at that. The game. He could have had a hat trick. He missed a penalty, and then he went close on two different occasions as well. When he was in his prime, he would have. I mean, one, he would have scored the penalty, and two, he would have scored at least another one of those goals. The question is now is, yes, he's been an absolute icon, one of Liverpool's, I probably wouldn't put him in the top 4, maybe 5 of Liverpool's players ever, but one of the best players we've seen in the last 20 years. He's going to be gone. Does Arne Slot play him now against Paris Saint-Germain? That's the big thing. Does he go with sentiment or does he go with form? Who would he put in front of him if he doesn't? He's still in terms of the temperament, he's still a big time player, but in terms of actually being effective, he's a shadow of the player he was. So that PSG game is going to be absolutely crucial, because if they get hurt in the way that Chelsea did, they could be out after the first leg.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Szoboszlai with his record of penalties. I mean, he's only missed 2 of 22. Salah's missed 13, I think, of 69, 70. And he just didn't look confident when he was taking it. He looked nervous, and obviously Trafford made a very good save, and credit to him. And I actually thought Trafford was a huge bonus for England in terms of their number 3, as well as obviously for City for their first choice in years to come. But yeah, I mean, Scott, you're completely right. You have to choose on form rather than sentiment. But the question is, who comes in? Is Frimpong good enough. I mean, Wirtz plays more centrally. I think if you play Wirtz behind Ekitike, that's a fine balance of a 10 and a 9, but it's out wide. And I also don't think it's helped by the sort of almost rotation at right back. And you need a very good defensively minded right back, because Mo Salah doesn't really track back and help out his fullback, particularly now. I just will put one thing in perspective. He is still the reigning Footballer of the Year, and I'm pretty sure the PFA's Player of the Year as well. I think we certainly voted for him. So look, but the form is not there, and as farewell tours go, it is going to be disappointing. So I think you're right, but it's just a question of who they replace him with.
You mentioned Dominic Szoboszlai there. I think he's probably the only Liverpool player that can look at himself in the mirror this season and say, my standards have been somewhere near where they were in that title-winning campaign. I don't think he's actually been quite as good, but certainly his drop-off has not been as severe as Salah or Virgil van Dijk, who again had a terrible game, Konate. The list goes on, really, McAllister in midfield. But he has had a bit of stick from Liverpool fans for a gesture that he made, I think, at the end of the game, when obviously a lot of them had already left, and he seemed to be suggesting that actually they weren't getting behind the team. They're 4-0 down away from home against their rivals of the past 5 seasons. They've been absolutely humiliated for the second time at the Etihad this campaign. It has been a disaster of a season. Does he have any right to start questioning those supporters?
Does he have any right to have a go at the supporters? In many respects, no. But you're absolutely right. He's been their standout player all season. And if you had 4 or 5 of him, then I don't think there'd be an issue. I don't think Liverpool would be winning the title, but they certainly wouldn't have a problem with getting into the Champions League. Put him in at right back, put him in at right midfield, put him in the centre midfield, one of the holders, one of the 10s. Maybe you could even stick him up front. The only one you couldn't is goalkeeper, but he'd probably do well there. I mean, it's such a difficult one. You've got to be careful when you have a go at the fans. The fans are completely within their rights. It's been a shocking season. I mean, when you think about it, from going from Premier League champions to now, out of all the cups by the Champions League. And by the way, I do think they will be out of the quarterfinal of the Champions League. And struggling along with Chelsea to finish top 5. I mean, that is a massive, massive drop off. And we talked about the reasons why. And obviously the major one is probably Diogo Jota. And it's very difficult to suddenly turn it around, and the loss and how affected that would have been with them emotionally. But they've got to finish better than this. And that's why, Arne Slot's job is on the line here. I mean, if he somehow wins the Champions League, well, wherever they finish, if he's won the Premier League and the Champions League in his first 2 seasons, he should be given time. But I think they will be out the Champions League, and they're struggling for top 5. If he wants to save his job, he's got to be absolutely ruthless. But then there's a balance there. On current form, you don't play Mo Salah. You could bring anyone in, whether it's a Cody Gakpo, not that he's been particularly great or whatever. Put Szoboszlai a little bit further up as well. But then you lose something in the dressing room. How will he react to that? We've already seen him react badly. So there's so many things that it's not just he's playing badly, he shouldn't play, that Arne Slot needs to think about. But ultimately, his job is absolutely on the line here, and he needs to do whatever his instincts tell him to.
Arne Slot should be really worried. The fact that Liverpool fans, who are known for their loyalty, for sticking out games to the end, the fact that so many of them left early, and I think it was because they were kind of voting with their feet. They were always making a statement. They didn't want to sort of sing about Arne Slot or whatever, because that is absolutely not that style. But the fact that you saw them leaving in numbers, and a few of them, I don't know how many, but you could see the videos of Liverpool fans on the stairwell as they left, some of them singing Xabi Alonso's name. And obviously he's a club legend. He's available. He's a good manager. We saw what he did in Germany, Real Madrid. There was a little bit of player power, and that's, it's always difficult to handle that there. And I think there will be some of them who are definitely turning towards him. So I think Arne Slot should be worried more about the fans than Szoboszlai. I thought actually Szoboszlai's point, particularly about the team and the team ethic and the lack of fighting spirit, I think he was pretty accurate.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I thought actually for half an hour they were in the game, Liverpool, and they had those chances that you've alluded to. But as soon as they conceded, the heads went down. And for me, Van Dijk, the captain, was the epitome of that. They absolutely looked deflated for that final hour. And to be honest, I think Manchester City probably declared at 4 in the end. It could have been more. So huge win for Manchester City. Big problems for Liverpool and Arne Slot. We're going to discuss their trip to Paris in the Champions League in just a few minutes. Let's quickly touch on Chelsea 7, Port Vale 0. I don't want to dwell on this game too much, Scott. I know you were there for talkSPORT. It was the
You're out of
perfect
order.
fixture.
Honestly, Chelsea get a good win. You don't want to dwell on it. What's the matter with you, huh?
Well, I think the bigger talking points are off the pitch. I mean, great win, 7-0. They did a professional job. Helps when the Port Vale goalkeeper chucks one in his own net in the first minute. But for me, the big story here was the absence of Enzo Fernandez that Liam Rossini obviously revealed at his press conference the day before the game, said he'd been sanctioned with a 2-match suspension effectively for his comments about a potential move away. Now, they can beat Port Vale handsomely without Enzo Fernandez. How big a gamble is this, Henry? Bearing in mind their next game is against Manchester City. Again, they really need to win in terms of their Champions League aspirations. It's going to be a lot harder to do that without Fernandez, isn't it?
I think it'd be more of a gamble if they'd actually started him and allowed him to continue as captain. I mean, obviously he's vice captain, but with Reece James out, Enzo Fernandez takes the armband. I think you can play Cole Palmer in that position. Enzo Fernandez has actually had a good season in terms of his stats and his contribution, but you can't call out and you can't keep flirting with Real Madrid. And it was almost like a sort of totting up offence by a referee, who just sort of pointing to the sort of 3 interviews that he'd done and said, right, that is a 2-game ban. It's effectively a 1-game ban, as you rightly point out. They probably would have rotated him anyway for the Port Vale game. But yeah, I mean, it is a gamble. And there's another gamble in there, and that Caicedo will be taking even more on himself against Manchester City. And if he gets booked, that triggers a 2-game ban, which will complicate the rest of the season even more. Because, I mean, echoes of Arne Slot's situation, as Scott was alluding to. Liam Rossini has to finish in the Champions League positions, because that is even more what it's all about. Because the owners, particularly American owners, will look at the Champions League. It's a ticket to ride. It's a gravy train. It's 80 million just to sort of get in there, and that he absolutely has to finish in there. So I think there was an element of him and the club reasserting their authority. There are also echoes with Mark Cucurella, who actually made 1 or 2, actually I thought quite logical points in his interview with the Athletic. But I think he needed to make a statement by leaving Enzo Fernandez out. Look, who turned up, as he should do, to support the players, and just remind him that, you know, you can win 7-0, okay, as you say, against Port Vale, but they can move on, or they can play without him. And you would imagine that Enzo Fernandez will leave in the summer. Whether Real Madrid will want him, particularly after what he's saying about Kylian Mbappe and the French, is another issue. But yeah, I thought fair play by Liam Rossini, because someone had to impose a little bit of control, a little bit of authority. You're looking for leadership at that club. Does it come from the boardroom, the sporting directors? Not particularly. But I think actually he showed a bit of leadership there with what he did with Enzo Fernandez.
I feel there's a bigger picture here, though, Crookie. And while you don't want your players coming out, you know, people might say stay in your lane and, you know, you just play the football. You know, we've been talking about it all season, haven't we? The lack of leaders, lack of the amount of leaders that they've got in those spinal positions as well. Goalkeeper, centre half, and another striker as well. So it's not all on Joao Pedro. And it's one thing for the fans to be saying it, who have been used to 20 years of Roman Abramovich. Yes, he sacked managers on a regular basis, but he gave the players, he gave the fans ready-made world-class players. The hierarchy of very intelligent people, multi-billionaires, but they're going down a route that they just want to just go youngsters only. And in terms of winning Premier League and Champions League, you don't. It's one thing the fans saying it. It's another thing ex-players like myself and others saying it. Now the current group of players are saying it as well. So for me, it's a big summer coming up. Do the hierarchy tweak? That's all it needs. It needs to be a tweak. I said last week about the type of players that they could bring in that are out there. Some of them they've missed already. Some of them are still out there. Or do you not do that and also be in danger of losing your best players as well? Because these players are reaching their peak years. And they want to be winning the major trophies. And if they feel that they don't, from the inside, think that they're going to be doing that, then you'll be getting a Marc Cucurella saying what he's saying, and Enzo Fernandez saying what he's saying, and maybe a few others as well. So I feel there's a bigger picture here. Yeah, okay, 2-match ban, 1-match ban, really, that's fine. But what are you going to do in terms of your philosophy? That's the big thing for me.
But Scott, can't you make the point internally to the board, to the sporting directors, rather than linking yourself with another club?
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of Enzo Fernandez, he didn't mention Real Madrid. He was asked the question which he shouldn't have answered. He should have just given the cheeky look and said, "I'm not going to answer that." But in what European city would you like to live in? And he said Madrid because it's very close to Buenos Aires with the language, with the culture, with the weather. So, should he have said that? No. But
Was it a
I'm trying to
random
think.
question though, Scott, or was it
Of course,
planted?
it's not a
Did he
random
know he
question.
was going to be asked a question?
Well, whether he knows he was going to be asked the question or not, I'm not so sure. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He shouldn't have answered it. But actually, for me, I'm looking at the bigger picture here. The fact he's answered it and he said what he's saying shows he's not happy with what's going on at Chelsea at the moment. And if he's saying that, if Mark Cucurella is saying that, how many other people are thinking it? And I agree with you, Henry. Go to the hierarchy. And Liam himself said, the thing that's disappointed me about Mark is that he didn't come to me personally first. Would it make a difference? I'm not so sure. But do it first. And then if you want to go, and I don't feel you should in the first place, make anything public. We certainly didn't do that back in our day. But it's a very different world nowadays. And if these people want to get away and they have had a sniff of a Real Madrid or whoever, or they're just not happy where Chelsea are going right now, because let's face it, they are a million miles away from the Champions League and the Premier League, despite what happened last season, then you're going to get this. So again, down to the hierarchy now. Are you going to tweak it or are you going to carry on? And then I feel things could get a lot worse than what they are right now.
But they aren't a million miles away from doing what Scott Minto did in 1997 and winning the FA Cup. We know it's going to be Chelsea against Leeds in the semi-final. Bit of a grudge match historically in English football. We touched on West Ham Leeds at the top of the programme. Final point on that game. How big a bearing, Henry, if any, do you think this result on Sunday will have come the end of the season? Because, of course, we know that Leeds are going to play West Ham on the last day and what could be a relegation decider.
Yeah, I mean, one of the sort of the negatives for Leeds, apart from having to play an extra half hour, is an injury to Stack, who looked like he had a boot on and crutches, and he's an important player for them. I think you can see with the celebrations, the positive element to it was absolutely huge. They will be very buoyed by it. West Ham have got a little bit of sort of internal issues to sort out when you saw Max Kilman make those two mistakes, one of which was punished for a penalty. And then some of the West Ham fans turned on their own player, which will probably get forgotten about given all the sort of the chaos at the end and the penalties and the drama. But that is something that Nuno will want to keep on top of, because absolutely, I mean, just look at the names of both teams. They're supposedly united and they have to be on this run in. Leeds obviously have the edge because of the points.
Well, that's it for the FA Cup. Let's turn our attention now to a busy midweek of Champions League action and a couple of huge ties for Liverpool and Arsenal. Paris Saint-Germain against Liverpool, live on talkSPORT on Wednesday. I thought Manchester City were an absolute banker at the weekend. I'd make PSG an even bigger one when you look at that Liverpool defence, which to me looks shot to pieces. You've spoken, both of you already, about the issues with Mo Salah and who might come in and replace him. I don't see any way that Liverpool come away from the French capital with anything other than a defeat, and probably quite a heavy one. Henry, make the case for a surprise result.
Well, I can't, particularly over the two legs, when you look at what the French league have allowed PSG to do in terms of dropping the Lens game in the middle. I thought that was against, I mean, Lens must be absolutely furious. So yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, you look at the players that PSG have got. You look at Kvaratskhelia. If he's going to be starting on the left and Gomez is at right back and Konate is having to sort of cover across to defend, I think that is going to be difficult. You look at Dembele, you look at Doué, you look at the players they got. They obviously had an extra day's rest. I mean, PSG are they're the European champions, and I think Liverpool could have quite a painful couple of games.
And what would that mean to Arne Slot, Scott? Because you've alluded to it. I mentioned, I think, on this podcast last week, the latest information I have is the hierarchy are backing the manager. They're not a football club, Liverpool, who really fire managers on the back of winning the title. But the noises from the Liverpool fans are getting louder. There are more dissenting voices. They've been hammered at the Etihad. If they do lose heavily over those 2 legs against PSG, is his position almost untenable, Arne Slot?
So it's a really tough one. I mean, because you say, I mean, Henry's already alluded to the fact that the Liverpool fans, they're one of the most loyal out there, and they did what they did at the weekend, and I understand why they did, and it's Liverpool Football Club and not the sacking type. I talked about how if they win the Champions League somehow, they can't do it, whatever happens to the rest of the league. I just, Henry's just said how the game in between is that there's no game for PSG. So, they'll be fresh. They're in a better place mentally. Tactically, they look so much better going forward as well. We saw how they can hurt Chelsea. And I genuinely feel the way that Liverpool are playing at the moment, this could be a similar aggregate scoreline as well. It could get as bad as that. For me, it's all about finishing top 5. If Arne Slot is able to finish top 5, even if they get knocked out by PSG, and even if it's heavily, then he can turn around and say, well, look what's happened from the start of the season, all the stuff on and off the pitch, the players that have gone, the players that have come in have taken time, the injury to Alexander Isak after all the money we've spent, give me another season. I think he could perhaps claim to that. But if they get knocked out against PSG and finish 6th, I think that I don't see where he's got to go, to be honest with you. So it's not just this particular thing. It's the Premier League as well. And they've got Chelsea coming up in a couple of weeks. What a game that will be.
I think it's also partly on the door of the sporting directors. I think that if they'd moved earlier in the transfer window in the summer for Mark Gay, and obviously Crystal Palace said, well, listen, we are prepared to do a deal. I mean, he was in the door. Crookie, you were reporting on it at the time. He was going through, I think, his medical with Liverpool in London. And Crystal Palace just needed some time to bring in draft in a replacement. I think if Liverpool hadn't tried to be so cute on that deal and actually say, right, let's get him in earlier in the season, in the pre-season, Crystal Palace would have been able to get someone, and Mark Gay would have just settled things down in defence. And I think he's played them 5 times since and won them all. So I think it's not simply on Arne Slot this.
Alexander Isak absent from the squad at the weekend. Arne Slot said it was too big a gamble to include him, having only just got back into training. Do they gamble here? Would you expect Isak to play a substantial part in this tie?
He's been out for too long to start, but have him on the bench and just see how the game goes. Hopefully it will go well and he won't be needed at a very early point of view, but you can't risk someone who's been out for so long and then start them. And if he breaks down in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes in a real high-powered, mentally and physically stressful situation, then he's going to get even more stick. I mean, you tell us, Crookie, what have you heard about what Arne Slot needs to do to keep his job?
Well, I don't think the conversations have become that terminal yet. I think he still feels the backing of the hierarchy, but I think that the fans turning against him in the numbers they are is a problem. And as I say, that the nature of the defeat against City at the weekend, coupled with potentially a heavy aggregate defeat here, is a problem. And what would concern me if I was a Liverpool fan, and obviously I'm not, so I'm not exactly unhappy. They've fallen off their perch from last season. They brought in a lot of players. Not many of them have necessarily lived up to their price tag so far, but the squad still looks really short. They need at least one central defender. I think they need another right back because they've not really replaced Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think they need a wide player, having let big names go in the summer. And potentially they still need another striker as well. So are they going to bring in 4 or 5 big players this summer? I'm not sure they are, because I think they've done the bulk of their spending, Henry.
Well, they've got the 2 centre halves to come back and to
But
come
they're both
in.
young kids, really.
They are, and you would want them to be one of them to be bedded in alongside Virgil van Dijk. But as you mentioned earlier, his form's not been great. I mean, for me, the game against PSG is all about Ekitike. You look at his relationship with the club; it didn't really work out there. He's probably got a point to prove to the board and to the players and to the fans there. He obviously got sent out on loan. I would start. I would build the whole team around him, whether that's sort of Ertz playing off him and playing the balls through to him, and just saying, Ekitike, this is your opportunity to show them what they are missing. And I mean, he can play off the left. I see all that, but I like him through the middle. I think they have to be upbeat. But again, coming back to the point Scott was making, who do you necessarily play on the right? But is it a huge game for Arne? Absolutely, because he's got two shots of the Champions League, winning it or getting back into it. And I think if he doesn't, I just think he's going to have a very painful summer.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens, not just in Paris, but beyond. But we will be there in the French capital, Adrian Durham, hosting your coverage as Liverpool take on the European champions. That's on Wednesday night, live on talkSPORT. On Tuesday, it's all about Arsenal as they go to Lisbon to take on Sporting. Now, when this draw was made, I think we all thought it was pretty much a given that Arsenal would at least get through to a semi-final. Are we as confident, Scott, having seen their performance and their second half capitulation at Wembley in the Carabao Cup final, and having seen them roughed up by Southampton at the weekend? Is this as big a tap-in as maybe it once was?
No, no, absolutely not. I mean, look, Sporting, with the greatest of respects, are the should we say, the least best team left in the competition. So it was a great draw, and it still is. But this is a mental thing for Arsenal, and I think this first leg is absolutely crucial. I mean, they say you can't win or lose in the first leg. Well, it can go very, very tough indeed, and you can have a mountain to climb. As I said earlier, if it's 2 or even a 3-0, I'm not sure after what's happened in recent weeks, they'll be able to come back from that. But look, I still back them to go through over the 2 legs, but they can't afford to lose the game by more than 1 goal. Sporting, as we saw in the last round, not great away from home, but they were 3-0 down and ended up scoring 5 against Bodo Glimt. And you can say that's Bodo Glimt, but they've beaten Manchester City and amongst many other teams as well. So they're a good side. This will be, we talked about Southampton's St Mary's, a great atmosphere. This is going to be and some. Trust me, they're going to be bang up for this one. And if Arsenal get roughed up again, then who knows what could happen. And if they get knocked out, Crookie, against Sporting, then I very much worry for them in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, obviously Gyökeres going back there, he'll absolutely have a point to make. I think coming back to Scott's point earlier about the spine, I think if you got that spine back in there and strong again, and you've got David Raya back in there, who could be a busy man. You know, you look at Trincao and the players they got, Goncalves, players in form. It's going to be a difficult night for them. But for me, this is about Declan Rice coming back in. And I know we've discussed Martin Odegaard, but Rice is the leader of that team. He doesn't need the armband to sort of get players going in the dressing room, to get them going on the pitch, but leading by example, whether it's those driving runs with Zubimendi sort of anchoring behind him, whether it's those in-swinging corners from the left, which he takes, which can cause such trouble. And that's one thing that did surprise me the other night, is they played so many short corners when they're actually been really effective with their, sort of normal corner routines. So I think maybe we'll see a bit more of the sort of the Arsenal, the familiar Arsenal from this season, and Declan Rice will set the tone for that.
Do we think Bukayo Saka will be risked? How big a miss will he be? Because actually, you look at his form over the course of the season, he's not quite been the Saka of old. So is he someone who maybe could benefit from an extended period not in the team, or are these games too big for Arsenal to even contemplate that?
I mean, obviously I cover England and I see Saka there, and you talk to people around England and you talk to people around Arsenal, and your own eyes show that he's not been at his best. He's had a dip, whether that's because he's just been playing and playing and playing, or whatever. But he's absolutely, by his high standards, he's not delivering. If Madueke is fit and flying, you can give him a chance. I mean, he's still not as effective. I mean, Saka's sort of developed. He's become sort of 2-footed. He's effective with his dead balls. Again, those in-swinging corners from the right with his left. He's very useful, but he's just not right. And I don't think he's necessarily fit anyway. So that's a big decision, and maybe we come back to Max Dowman. Personally, I prefer him. I know he can play off the right, but I do like him in that sort of slightly more sort of central Odegaard role. And I think Arsenal, look, whether you actually start him in a big Champions League game like this, but if you do, it wouldn't faze him.
Well, what an occasion it will be in Lisbon, Sporting against Arsenal, live on talkSPORT on Tuesday night. Feels massive now, just in terms of momentum for Arsenal to get their trophy push back on track. Let's quickly touch on the other two quarter-final first legs, two blockbusters in their own right. I'm going to be watching Real Madrid Bayern Munich for talkSPORT on Tuesday. Scott, is it too simplistic to say that whoever wins this tie should be favourites to go on and win the European Cup?
Yeah, I think it is too simplistic to say that, because obviously you've got PSG. I mean, hopefully Liverpool, we say what we said about Liverpool, but we hope they go through. But I don't think they're as strong. PSG can be, because they've got the individuals. Barcelona, I feel defensively a little bit too vulnerable. I've gone, I think I went the same as you, didn't I? A Bayern Arsenal final I went with Bayern Munich actually winning it. Listen, I was out in the Bernabeu, by the way, absolutely loved it. Just an amazing atmosphere, incredible stadium. And I spoke to a lot of people who work regularly in Madrid and on Real Madrid, and that was one of their best games of the season. And you know, they lifted themselves. Now you can turn around and say, well, that's what Real Madrid do, and they've certainly shown even in recent years, is their cup, and they lend it to other teams on the odd occasion. But I feel Bayern Munich are too strong here. I really do, in terms of from a full team point of view. And with Harry Kane, you know, proud to say it as well, he's an absolute superstar, and I think he'll end up being a difference. I think they'll get found out against Bayern Munich. City were far too poor defensively out in Madrid, and then they're just chasing the game after that, obviously with Bernardo Silva getting sent off at home. I fancy Bayern Munich here over two legs.
Can you imagine Harry Kane against Arsenal? I mean, that would be yeah, that would be quite a lively game. I mean, you look at Kane and the way he's playing. I mean, for club and country, it's something crazy. Is it 53 goals in 45 games? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's sort of Haaland level. And, you know, there's so much of a debate about, you know, where have all the number nines gone? Well, maybe we should celebrate these two in particular and just hope that academies and young kids coming through who all want to be ballers, they all want to play out sort of wide and do their tricks and everything. But actually, maybe they look at Kane, they look at Haaland, different players, but still special centre forwards, and think, well, you know, I'll aspire to be them rather than a 10.
Henry, last word on these Champions League quarterfinals to you. Barcelona against Atletico Madrid. These two actually played each other at the weekend. Barca won 2-1, and your man Marcus Rashford was on the score sheet. I mean, that would be an incredible story as well, wouldn't it? Jettisoned from Old Trafford, goes and wins the Champions League with Barcelona.
Well, it'd be a great story. And you want to see English players doing well abroad. And it's good to see him thriving out there. It's good to see him playing with a smile. I mean, he's playing because Rafinha's injured, which is hugely unfortunate for Barcelona, because he's such a special player. But I think you see it with England under Tuchel, how much he obviously loves Rashford. We saw a couple of glimpses, certainly in the Uruguay game, when Rashford put the afterburners on, that, you know, how special he can be when he attacks the fullback. So yeah, I mean, it'd be great to see him doing it also, because he is partly playing for his future as well.
I just think the Champions League, when it gets to this stage of the season, is absolute box office. You can make a case for all four ties, I think, being the standout story of the week. And of course, you can follow it all right here on talkSPORT. Tuesday night, we got Sporting against Arsenal from Lisbon. Wednesday night, Adrian and the team in the French capital as PSG take on Liverpool. We've got Europa League commentaries on Thursday as well. And then, of course, the Premier League returns next weekend. Some huge games, not least Scott's old club Chelsea against Manchester City. We'll be previewing that in full towards the back end of the week. Sam Matterface back with us for that. Henry, Scott, thanks very much for your company. Enjoyed it as always.